Sinister.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise and welcome back to From the Depths, Most Wanted. Today we are covering the Iron Cordon, and for those of you who have been following my Nita playthrough, like I've been mentioning that playthrough a lot in videos recently, I don't know, it's gotten to a point where I enjoy it, I always look forward to it. That being said, I enjoy all the series I currently do, so not really the point. The point is that the Iron Cordon has been a bugbear for me, in particular, for quite a long time. It is kind of the combination of the most annoying traits of the Bulwark and the Trebuchet, both of those other craft also being godly class Onyx War specials. Trebuchet might very well get its own video at some point, but for now I felt like covering the Iron Cordon because, frankly, it is a thing that deserves a video of its own. So, most annoying combination of Bulwark and Trebuchet, because like the Bulwark, it is very, very tough. It's not as squishy as the Trebuchet is, not as fragile, and it's got big cram cannons on it. And like the Trebuchet, it faces straight on to the target, and it has big 500mm high explosive advanced cannons, which is very annoying if you're not prepared for it, and I wasn't prepared for it when I first ran into it back in, I don't remember what episode it was of my own playthrough. So, what is this thing's strengths, apart from, well, it's got 8 cram cannons on it, in 2 turrets, so let's have a quick squiz at these. These aren't huge, they're in fact not very big at all, really. See, about 1,225mm for this front one. I will guess that the back one is the same size, and it is high explosive and kinetic. I'm not sure if there's actually a fuse in here somewhere. I'm pretty sure these are penetration depth, but I can't see where. I should really find the lead-in fuse box before I set these episodes. Okay. Where is the thing? 7% of the shell, I think. Yeah, it's got fuses. It's got a few of them. An interesting cram Tetris in order to, well, it's not that interesting. It's regular 4x4. Oh, hello. I think I found one. Yeah, okay. So if this one is like the other ones, inertial penetration depth. So, yep. So that's that one, and this one, I'm guessing, is the same thing. So, yep. Inertial penetration depth. It's a little small. These guns are a little bit small for penetration depth crams, but you know what, like, which is a kind of a blessing, because it means that if you fight this thing, it isn't a disaster if you've skimped on the armor a little bit, because, what is it? Armor piercing value of 36, and this is fully crammed, by the way, so let's see, I think that, yeah, 2 layers of metal will at the very least stop one of these shells getting through. Possibly 3. It'll probably get destroyed in the process, but it can stop it, unlike what happens when you get much bigger cram shells, like on the Bulwark, which just punch through multiple layers of metal and then blow your face off. So that's the crams. They're not amazing, but the real damage dealer on this thing is this turret in the middle, this advanced cannon, and this is, well, quite straightforward really. It's not particularly fast. Well, I don't know, there's 422 meters per second, is still decently fast for shell, got a base bleeder, arguably doesn't need it according to the people I've talked to who know their advanced cannons very well. If you do... Oh no, it does need it. Okay, never mind. Extra 2 meters per second. And it's just, well, it's just high explosive and lots of it. About 6,000 explosive damage. 4 meter long shells. It's a hefty kaboom, to be sure. But again, it's nothing incredibly fancy. This craft doesn't really do fancy. I can kind of respect it for that, actually. One of the things it does do fancy, I should mention, is that it has a LAM system. My favorite kind, and by favorite kind I mean the most annoying kind. It's a rather strong pulse LAMs, which is very loud and blows lots of cramshells completely out of the air. In fact, I'm going to demonstrate that right now by turning this off and spawning in something that spits a lot of cramshells. Where are you? There you go. That's not what I wanted to do. Not what I wanted to do at all. Didn't mean to spawn in something with my funky paint scheme. And this is a funky paint scheme. For some reason, the Onyx Watch... Nah. I shouldn't begrudge another fleet's building colors, even though whenever I spawn in an Onyx Watch vessel on my colors, I don't know. Pale barrels look weird to me. It looks almost as if it's color inverted. But in any case, let's try this again. And something that spits out a lot of crabs. That's a little bit close. So yeah, even at this range, that LAMs is zapping cramshells, which is rather irritating, to be honest with you. Admittedly, these are not very big or very strong cramshells, but actually, no, never mind, didn't make much of a dent at all. Particularly on the front here, you see there's like 4 of these LAMs nodes all in a row. This thing is not easy to kill with crams, or missiles for that matter, from the front. Which means, yeah, I mean, look at that. It just pop, 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 pop. So yeah, that's a little bit irritating. Let's do this now. See these guns just go to complete work. And those pen depth guns do enough kinetic damage at least to like tear through single layers of armor, so yeah, you don't really want this thing shooting at you and being able to hit you. So while we're talking about that, we should probably talk about the Aaa Guns' own armor, which is nothing to be sneezed at. This thing actually has more armor layers than the Bulwark does generally. The Bulwark usually actually has most of its armor on the guns, weirdly, whereas this thing really stacks it on the front. So here, look at this nonsense right here. So we've got rams on the front, more about them later. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of metal in this really strong armored prow right there. It's a little bit thinner up here, but down there at the borderline, very tough. And around here, which is where the ammo is, we've got 2 layers of metal and 2 layers of wood, which honestly, the wood doesn't do a lot to improve the armor, but it does add a little bit. So, save a shell up here. That's just a metal slope, not a big deal. But metal beam and then 2 layers of wood, that every little bit counts. So the sides are pretty tough as well. And down here we got armored ammo compartment and double metal layers. So yeah, this thing is very, very strong. This front compartment in particular is ridiculous. Well, not completely ridiculous, but yeah, even down here, right at the waterline, 3 layers of metal. And 2 over there. So, and I believe that even its backside is pretty well armored. So, back here, yeah, there's 2 layers of metal right there. There's an air gap right here, but again, over here, 2 layers. 1 layer here, but that's recessed right in the back underneath this great big... Interesting, there's a lot of wood back here. Well, there's your one weakness right to begin with. Well, okay, never mind. It's double layers of metal, and then suddenly this. Interesting, that actually is spall liner for the back turret. Interesting, interesting. So, thick armor, it's got, oh yeah, I should mention, like, it's got bonus little cram guns right here. It's, these are not amazing. I mean, they're less than 1,200 millimeters, so just little bonus crams. And tiny little setup right here, not amazing Tetris at all. And honestly, because these things are kind of situated close to where the ammo compartment is, these things can tend to get blown off quite quickly, so don't really worry about these. It's the 3 main turrets you need to be concerned with. And speaking of things to be concerned about, like a lot of Onyx Watchcraft, this doesn't have really comprehensive shield coverage, but like a lot of godly and expert Onyx Watch designs, it does annoyingly have shields planted in quite inconvenient spots if you want to shoot at it. So, spawn in the bay leaf right now. We're going to let you get 1 volley off just to see what happens. Now that'll take too long. So here. Here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here we have shields. This one is... yeah, these shields are very strong, I should mention. This doesn't really deal with overlapping shields at all. It just has very... well, as strong as you can get, actually. Not particularly wide or tall or long range, but very strong. So... yeah, just it's annoying to shoot along the length of this thing because, like, along its length, these strength 10 ones just keep catching shells. So we do here, you see, it's not a huge amount of shields, but yeah, there's this turret is covered from the front, strength 10s, and the middle turret has yeah, is completely covered with shields. So trying to use pure kinetics on this is not going to work. It is a tier above that kind of thing. It's got more right here. I believe that, yep, this is just a strength 1, which is interesting. Let's look at these things. Let's look at these things. That is a strength 5. And this over here. Where's you? That one. Yeah. Okay. That's also strength 5. So strength 5 is pretty good. Just on the front here, it'll stop a lot of shells and stop... in particular, it tends to stop things like Hesh or hollow points hitting the hull directly. But that's not a huge issue for those because there are big gaps in the shields right here. So that is something to be aware of. You can't just spam... you can't just spam pure kinetics at this thing. Well, you can't really do that with any godly Onyx Watchcraft, but thing to note, it does have shields. You can't just get away with life. And that was good of you. Let's do that. And because of all the high explosive damage that the Iron Cordon deals out, you'll see that you can't really use wooden ships against it, and I wish I wasn't talking from experience, but I am. I very much am. It does sometimes shoot itself, though, which is embarrassing for it. Okay, I am going to go find a shield and change it. There we go. Yeah, this thing does sometimes shoot itself, worth mentioning. Okay, I should, and another thing to mention about this craft is that, in particular, when people were giving me advice about how to deal with this in the comments section, a lot of people were demonstrating their ignorance of this particular craft by saying, just use EMP. Onyx Watch really vulnerable to EMP, and that is true for the most part, particularly anything that is from easy to expert. Not so much with this thing, and this... well, to start with, the deck is made of wood. This whole craft is essentially got a Faraday cage, so EMP hits here, yeah, it might fry what's on the front here, but because it doesn't travel through the deck, or here, it kind of just circles around the hull, and it has more than a few surge protectors. Got a few there. I just fly around, we should be able to see more. None down here. Yeah, but believe me, it has them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do they still show up? Yep. So you can see here, there, and everywhere. Especially, whoa, look at this. Like, yeah, this is serious EMP protection, actually. There's heavy armor, and there's wood, and there's a butt-ton of surge protectors right here. So, if you want to capture this thing, you are probably not going to AI dead it with anything short of a completely stupid amount of EMP. So, to all those people who just say, use EMP, you noob, I regret to inform you that it is you who is the noob, because the Iron Cordon laughs at your Onyx Watch prejudices. Ha! So yeah, look at this. This is like EMP defense to the max, which is actually quite unusual for the Onyx Watch, really. Yeah, lots of wood. Most of the interior of this thing is actually made of wood as well, so... Yeah, what will you pop off? You'll pop the occasional shield, you'll pop off detection systems, you'll pop off, where are the munition warners on this thing? There's one. You'll pop, things like this. You're not gonna get the main AI. You will not get it in a million years. And what else? I mentioned over here where the ammo is. So here's the ammo compartment, there's another one on the other side, and it is way below the waterline, where the armor is thickest, and remember this thing drives at its target straight on. So what happens is, shots fired from here, it aims off to the side of the center line of the ship, which is where the weapons are. So it's a little bit like, it's aim point spoofing. It's pretty standard aim point spoofing, and this is, in fact, the way to do it if you're going to use aim point spoofing on a craft that drives straight towards a target. It's a similar thing with planes. What you see with planes in From the Depths is people tend to put ammo barrels right on the wingtips, so that it flies straight towards a target, and they're aiming for off to the side rather than straight down the middle. It's a way of compensating for the fact that anything moving in a straight line in From the Depths is actually pretty easy to hit, even with slow firing weapons and slow shells, like crams. And the fact that this thing sachets from side to side as it drives towards a target doesn't hurt either. It means that if it was coming in a perfectly straight line, well, the aim point spoofing wouldn't work so well. But since it kind of washes from side to side, it's hard to describe. You kind of have to see it, which is, well, why I'm going to do this now. What can we spawn in? Let's spawn in one of my ships. What's something that... the Guana! Let's just spawn this in. Where you go. And hopefully it lasts long enough to survive. It's probably not going to. Okay, so if we look over here, you'll see that, yeah, you'll see that the Iron Cordon kind of wiggles from side to side, and like a lot of ships do, to be honest. What is wrong with the shields there? I said select all. And especially this, it's doing a kind of Tokyo drift this way. That really screws with shots aimed at either side, to the starboard or port sides of the ship. The Guana is lasting longer. Okay, never mind. Yeah, wooden craft against Iron Cordon. I believe I've mentioned that doesn't work very well. Also, repair spam is a stupid idea. Never do it. Learned that the hard way. Okay, enough of lizards getting shot at. And last but not least, about the... Wow, we actually managed to put a dent on it. Well done, the Guana. Wasn't really expecting that. Kind of thought it would die instantly. So, last thing to note about the Iron Cordon in how annoying it is that it has rams on the front. And the way this thing works is that it will, instead of what the trebuchet does, which continually backpedals to stay at range, this thing drives straight towards its target until it rams it. And these actually do quite a fair bit of damage, even though this thing doesn't move particularly quickly. So yeah, this thing will drive slowly towards you, blowing you up as it comes, until it finally pokes you to death with its nose. So, that's the strengths of the Iron Cordon. Now, the weaknesses of it. The juicy bits, my favorite bits. So, for the first thing is that this, I should mention as well, did I? I did not mention that at all. it's got these little Aaa guns here. These are kind of the bog standard version that you see on many Onyx Watchcraft. These really aren't that effective because, well, they're not very effective simply because of where they're aimed. They have quite a narrow angle of fire. They can fire kind of there and kind of backwards and also a little bit below it for some reason. But they're not good at anything off to, say, here. So they can only really shoot at aircraft once it's right over here. So, to demonstrate that, I'm going to show you what I mean. So it's vulnerable to fast aircraft, and just it's generally vulnerable to fast things in general because it's armed with crams for one thing, and the shells it uses for this big scary APS gun in the front, they're reasonably fast. They're not super fast. They do miss, and the detection systems on this are not really set up to hit really fast targets, and so I will demonstrate that by spawning in a little annoying flyer. And I happen to have one right here. Where are you? So yeah, Anurog. Little pride and joy annoying aircraft. We'll see how long it takes to die, because it will probably die eventually. The Iron Cordon only really needs to get lucky once. But particularly anything that jinks around like this. Yeah, so Lexo, not gonna help you. And admittedly, the Anurog doesn't function really like a true aircraft. It doesn't fly straight towards a target. But you can see that, like, whoa, that was close. Iron Cordon doesn't really do fast with, like, small, fast, janky targets. Especially if they do fly like they've had way too much cocaine. Does cocaine make you fly like this? I think maybe alcohol does. So anyway, the Anurog, by the way, is probably not going to damage the Iron Cordon at all because, well, yeah, just regular sonar torpedoes tend to get exploded by the LAM system on it. I can't tell you how much I really hate the sound of pulse slams. They are burned in my memory forever. So it's not good at hitting things that are small and fast. In fact, anything moving over about 80 meters per second, especially if it orbits it at long range, it is never gonna hit it. It's just not gonna happen. And if we do this, I should show you one major weakness of it. It's like a lot of craft which use APS, well, particularly explosive APS, and doesn't use ejectors and doesn't wrap the turret itself in heavy armor. What happens is, you will notice that this big, scary gun is directly on top of, well, pretty much, not all the engines, but about 4 of them. And what happens when this thing goes up is that it takes, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 engines out with it. I will demonstrate that right now. Where am I? I'm on the ocean floor. So we go here, explode, turn that off. Don't lag, and I'm going to go in here and what? Hello? There we go. I was wondering why it wasn't going kablooey. Okay, so that's what you want to happen when you shoot at this thing. The sooner you can disable the gun in the middle, the better. Because not only does it actually get rid of most of the functional firepower, you'll see here. It takes out most of the engines and in fact starts damaging the LAM system over here as well. And it is very dangerous to the AI and makes a nice convenient hole for shots to fly through if they're coming from above or if they're plunging down and arcing. They also knock a hole right here and blow up some of the fuel, so this thing is volatile. They don't have good damage control apparently in the Onyx Watch. So it's like possibly less extreme version of what happens to a trebuchet when you pop it. So this is a major weakness of that. When this main gun goes, you have pretty much won, because these cram guns don't really dish out enough ducker to be a huge problem. They're a little bit too small, and the fact that they're pen depth at such a small-ish gauge means they really don't do enough damage. They can't match this big APS gun in the middle for dealing out the damage. So, when this goes, this craft is basically done at about 87% health. And another thing to note about this is that you'll notice the deck is made of wood, making it rather difficult to kill this thing with EMP. It is, however, just... let's see how many layers this is. This is a few layers of wood. 1, 2, that's it. It is 2 layers of wood, which is better than 1 layer of wood. But on the front here, it is just 1 layer of wood. 2 layers of wood on the main decks right here. I believe... yep, it's 1 layer of wood. 1 layer of wood here on the... I don't know what bit of the ship this would be called. I want to say forecastle, but that's definitely not it. Probably a sailing ship term for this elevated back bit. Wait, no, this is the bridge. You get 1 layer of wood above your head when this thing is fighting. And I believe back here also just... nope, this is... yep, just 1 layer of wood. So its deck is very weak. And if you remember the bit when I was showing what this thing's shield coverage looks like, particularly this part over here and the corresponding part over here is not covered by shields, which means that there's a big gap for frag shells and kinetic shells to fly in, shred the deck, and now they're into the juicy bits here, and they'll just essentially punch through layers of wood. So from here, imagine, well, it's not really something a sabot shell will do because they have a flat trajectory, but imagine for a moment that you've got a nice big penetration depth shell, which is either cram or ABS, and goes, meow, easy punch through 2 layers of wood. Oh, hello, where this gun is. Right here. So you could imagine from the right angle, a railgun would possibly, like, disable this thing in 1 shot. To say nothing of what a good penetration depth cram does. And I've tested the Naga against this craft often enough to tell you that it's pretty spectacular. And also, should mention, let's get rid of you. Let's spawn you in again. And I'll show you something else. It's a bit of a weakness of this craft. You'll notice there's a lot of barrels on it. It's got 12 barrels, in fact. 8 of them are cram, 4 of them are APS. There's a trick to ensuring that... well, a bit of background here. The way turrets are aimed is that if you have a local weapon controller on the turret itself, it will aim all weapons on that turret according to the statistics of just one of them. So, we have 4 separate firing pieces on this turret right here, and we have only a weapon controller on the turret itself. And I believe that there are no other weapon controllers in here. So you see along here, no weapon controllers in here, even though you could probably fit them in, reasonably straightforward. Which means that when this thing is being controlled and fired by the AI, the weapon controller is only paying attention to one of these, which is, like, usually the least accurate one, whichever one that is. These are all equal right now, but what tends to happen when this thing gets shot at, as you might expect, the barrels get blown off. So say, shell comes here, blows off 3 of the barrels, there's just 1 remaining. This thing will then proceed to miss pretty much every shot, because it's aiming with the damaged barrels, the least accurate ones, the ones which don't have good muzzle velocity. So, when this thing gets hit in the face, this turret, it's pretty much disabled. Same for the one in the back. And to a lesser extent, this one in the middle, because same thing. You'll go in here, you'll see where's the firing pieces, they're right here. No local weapon controllers stuck in here, which means that as far as the local weapon controller on the turret is concerned, there might as well only be 1 firing piece here, and it will only use the information from one of them to aim all 4 of these guns. Which is a bit of a bugger. It's helpful to be aware of that, actually. It's why pretty much every multi-turreted turret I build, and I haven't built many on ships that I actually have, by the way, the Naga's possibly the only one, they have local weapon controllers in the turret itself, so that if one barrel gets sheared off, it doesn't ruin the accuracy of all of them. So this is a long way of saying is that this craft tends to get disabled reasonably quickly once it takes barrel damage, and the same actually applies to the Bulwark and the Trebuchet. They also don't have local weapon controls in the turrets themselves. They just have it controlling the turret block. So yeah, that's helpful to know. And another thing I should mention is that the shell speed on this big APS gun right here is pretty fast, over 400 meters per second. This is a 500mm shell, it's pretty big, and 400 meters per second is pretty fast, but it is not fast enough to stop it getting popped by lambs. In particular, munition mortars can spot the shell 275 meters away. And the lambs can pop it reasonably easily. And to demonstrate that, I will spawn in something with a really annoying lamb system. In fact, where should I spawn this? I will spawn this right here. I will... What can I spawn in that has a really annoying lamb system? I could spawn in the Naga, actually. Nah, no, it won't spawn in the Naga. I'll spawn in something else. I'll spawn something from nature. What has the most annoying lamb system in the world? Actually, don't even try to answer that question. It's a list a mile long. We're just gonna go with the Terror. No, you mother... Okay. Turning off. All turning off. Shakes, that was close. Okay, so now I turn this guy on. And you'll see... actually getting through. You'll notice... Boom. So you see out here, that was... looks like 2 shells, actually. Out of 4 got blown up before they even got close. This is a problem with, like, higher gauge APS shells. They suffer the same thing as cram shells do, which is that a sufficiently punchy lambs will catch them and destroy them. I think once the turret's lambs is fully warmed up, it is gonna stop. Yeah. If it doesn't fire its entire volley of guns all at once, it tends to lose a lot of shells to stuff like this. So, it's one of the hot topics of the... not hot topics, best hints for dealing with Onyx Watch ships. Have a good lamb system. And I did just... Shut the hell up, you're so loud. Have a good lamb system when you fight this thing, and yes, I did throw up a little in my mouth when I just said that, so... Dun, 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 dun. And should be worth mentioning that this thing, like most Onyx Watch craft, it is not fast at all. It is... some people tend to have slightly different definitions of what constitutes fast, and actually looking at it now, this guy moves a bit faster than a lot of Onyx Watch craft, but it's still about 10 meters per second. It is not a quick vessel. Not at all. Which means that, if you are inclined, you can kill it with things that are good against slow targets. You can use crams, you can use bombers, you can use... well, you can use slow, really packed on torpedoes for that kind of thing. So, taking command. That's the strengths, that's the weaknesses. What do we get from all this? Firstly, you get how to survive this thing attacking you. Well, there's 3 main ways to do it. And the first is to be fast and dodgy, as you would have seen with the Aaa. The second is to be below the water. In fact, I'm going to show you that right now with one of my favorite submarines. And by favorite submarines, I mean I hate this thing. The Typhoon. Oh dear, Typhoon got tickled. I should mention that the Iron Cordon doesn't really have any anti-submarine stuff, unless it's this close, apparently. Give it time, Typhoon is still diving. And let's just repair you, because that was a little bit unfair to you, sir. There you go. Oh my god, does the Typhoon have a smoke gun? That is amazing. So you see, being underwater, as usual against, well, a lot of ships actually, and particularly the Onyx Watch, you are pretty safe down here. So, you either fast and are nice and dodgy, you submerge, or you do, well, as you can see, you can throw off, you can catch most of an Iron Cordon volley with a decent lamp. Will you be quiet? Please stop pulsing. At this rate, like, the main thing that annoys me about lamp system is how loud they are. Please. Lord and Savior Nick Smart, turn down the volume on those things. Or even get a new sound for them, because I'm tired of that. Of course he's going to make time for, like, answering the... not answering. What's the thing? Fulfilling the request of one random guy on YouTube. Anyway. So, you would have seen just with the Tur is that you can catch most of them to volley from an Iron Cordon from all of its guns with just a decent LAM system. If you pack layered shields on that, you're pretty much immune to this. So yeah, you will see that in a moment. I'll throw the Naga against this thing at the end. You get to see how, well, how the summation of my experience with testing with this bloody craft has improved my ship design. Okay, so there's all that, and I would have summed up, and I've basically summed up everything I'm going to say here at the end already, but that's how to survive it. You either be fast and dodgy, you go underwater, or you use layered shields and lambs, although honestly, if you do all three, well, don't let me stop you. And how to kill it? Well, the good news is there's a variety of ways you can kill it. Missiles probably aren't a good idea, because, I don't know, it still has pretty decent armor all over the place, missiles being very weak. And EMP doesn't work as well on this thing as it does against other Onyx Watchcraft. You're not gonna AI dead this thing just with EMP alone. However, cram cannons, because this is a slow target, work pretty well. You're using a APS smoke to shut down the lambs, very good idea. Tried and true method, I swear by it. Like, you can't see it, but my hand is on my heart and my other hand is in the air. Swear on my soul, crams plus smoke, good for you. Smoking is good for your health in this game, in general. Unless you use lasers, in which case, well, no smoke for you. But yeah, so as I mentioned before, crams work pretty well on this thing, provided you get rid of the lamps first, especially penetration depth, because as said before, the deck of this thing is rather flimsy. If a cram shell penetration depth flies through here, suddenly it's right inside the ship and can pop juicy things like this main gun back here, like the engine back here. You can go through the side. Oh, hello, ammo. Kaboom. And pretty much same thing with APS. You can pretty much use whatever you like, so long as it can get through the LAM system. And the shields, a particularly good combination is high explosive frag, because there's gaps in the shields. Frag does a real number on this. High explosive makes real short work of the deck and has a tendency to shear barrels off. And the other is the super meta combo these days of Disruptor Hesh, which means the Disruptor shells just pop the shields off, and the Hesh does an absolute number against this thing because thumps straight through the armor, does have spool lining of a sort with wood behind this metal, doesn't help tremendously because what happens is that if Hesh hits straight on a turret, it goes kablooey. Okay, so yeah, I should mention as before, like pen depth APS would also do really well against this thing. Haven't really tested that. I've yet to get the hang of pen depth for advanced cannons. Probably will do really nicely, especially if it goes through the deck. And the other thing is that I mentioned missiles don't really do well against it. Frag missiles tend to hit this thing straight in the armored bits, and that's no good. But a torpedo swarm plus smoke does do really well, especially because these little Aaa Guns are so low to the water. Torpedoes can pop these off reasonably quickly, and right down here you'll see that well, like a lot of ships, it's got a nice soft underbelly. It's got a layer of metal, layer of wood. Hello, this is a little bit thicker. Actually, no it isn't, never mind. Layer of metal, layer of wood, hello, big, expensive, juicy, delicate engine. So, it's not easy to just sink this craft, by the way. It's got a lot of wood in it, and it's got a lot of air pumps and cavities. So you're not going to get an 80% in sinking with this thing, very likely. You're more likely to kill it all the way. And like pretty much every Onyx Watch ship, it has no defense against lasers at all. It has no laser absorbing shields, it has no smoke dispensers. So if you are a fan of disco, you are gonna love what you can do with this, and I will show you that right now, right as soon as I bail ship, because I don't want to be on here when I spawn in the Hypatos. As much as I hate the Hypatos as well, it is a very convenient way of demonstrating if something is weak to lasers. It does have smoke. Where the hell does this thing have smoke? I keep, like, missing where the smoke is, but it doesn't have a lot, it doesn't have enough. You can just see the blocks cascading off it. This is what armor-penetrating lasers do to anything that does not have sufficient smoke. And whatever smoke is on there, I swear to God, where the hell was that? Is it around here? I can't even tell. But yeah, if you like lasers, you're not going to have much trouble with the Iron Cordon. Because, it will get disintegrated by lasers. Just look at all the freaking Blocken video. Admittedly, the Hypatos has stupidly powerful lasers, so this isn't demonstrating that much. But yeah, if you're not a fan of disco, I suggest you give it a try. I used to hate lasers, still kind of do, but they have their uses. Okay, that's enough of that. You get the picture. And so that's basically it for the Iron Cordon. It is a big, slow lump of metal, armed with high explosive. Layer the shields, fast craft. Give it a taste of its own medicine, particularly with armor breaching stuff, and you should be okay. Just don't do what I do and what I did and send unshielded wooden craft against it. Rookie mistake. You don't want that. So we're just going to finish off with the Naga tearing this thing a new one, and we might even have time to watch it all the way through. Won't that be lovely? Wee. Wee. And away you go, girl. So yeah, as I said, Naga has lambs, it has layered shields, got pen depth, got smoke, frying shells before they even get close. In fact, continuous lambs work pretty well against the Iron Cordon. See, lambs are smoked, boom. And EMP on missiles actually does pretty well at frying the lamb systems right on the front of this thing. You can see, barrel sheared. Suddenly this thing is a lot less dangerous. And the Naga has not taken any damage at all. This is a beautiful sight. You can see pen depth does a real number because as strong as multiple layers of metal are, plunging shots through the wooden hull... let's pause this for a second. So you can see already just a few shots landed through here, and oh boy, already this little armored compartment for the central main gun is at risk. And there's no shields down here, which means that plunging fire penetration depth can actually bypass all the shields you would have seen stuck around the central turret. Yep, there she goes. Penetration depth. And this fight is pretty much over already because This one little cram here, yep, all of them are going to miss pretty much. Except they didn't get the chance because the lambs took care of it, so... I should mention as well, the Naga is about 80,000 materials more expensive than the Iron Cordon, so this isn't an entirely fair fight. But you can apply pretty much everything I just said onto quite a cheap craft. Like, well, not a super cheap craft, but still something cheaper than the Iron Cordon itself. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, those little slat guns never even got to fire. The crams on either side, the fixed guns, they never even got to fire, so the Iron Cordon is actually a little bit wasteful in some ways. Like, you could clip off the little Aaa Guns and the side crams, and the overall effectiveness of this craft I don't think would be modified that much at all. I should probably stop saying that, because otherwise, you know what's going to happen. The devs are going to might watch this and go, you are absolutely right. We should find a way of making this thing a lot more annoying than it already is. Because it is annoying. If you're like me, and we're... Well, basically, this is one of those craft where for whatever reason you're playing on godly difficulty, and you're still new to the game, this thing will make your life miserable. How did that happen? Seriously, how did that happen? Did a shell land on me? Why am I landing right... Okay, let's run down this way. And now we can finish off what we're doing. And, yep, Iron Cordon is very, very, very dead. Now, let's turn in the bounty, because this wanted criminal has been sent down to the depths. And we'll dredge it up later from the depths. Ahaha! You see what I did there? I made her funny. So, hope you lot found this helpful, those of you who've been having trouble with the Iron Cordon. I speak from a lot of experience, having raged at that thing quite hard in the past. Some of you might know which episode I'm talking about. So in any case, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And I will see you next time in From the Depths Most Wanted. Farewell!